September 30, 2024. This is the S&P 500 E-futures mini on the 2000 tick chart using NinjaTrader 8. This is what the chart looked like today. It was kind of slow. It was kind of a slow day today. There wasn't that many setups. I did find a couple, well, a little bit more than a couple. There's some almost trades in there as well. Looks like in the pre-market it sold off. There was a small rally, so up until this point, I thought it was just going to be range bound. I managed to think I found a up channel right here, this red one. But while I was mainly playing these smaller channels, it was quite choppy. Sold off right around 10:55. The FOMC chair, Fed Powell, came out and said, well, he just had a press conference. So it's arguably, I mean, you can argue that it caused a sell-off, but I'm not so sure because whenever he gives his color commentary or press conference, it can be interpreted in a bunch of ways, as with any information that's released. So I mean, it's just be careful here, but it doesn't have quite the impact as a rate decision would have, or a CPI number, or an inflation number. Then it kind of bottomed out here, made two legs up, and rallied hard. And unfortunately, on this big rally and this big sell-off, I didn't find any good entries. So I'm going to go into my trades. Took a total of 2 trades today. Was profitable on both. And then I'm also just going to go into the other setups that I found. In the pre-market, it was just really choppy. And right before the market opened, I could tell the volume wasn't very high today. So I wasn't really thinking prices were going to move all that much. So it hits the low and it starts opening. It opens during this big up channel. So, well, not big up channel, but I drew this yellow up channel because it fit pretty well at the time. And it looked like it was obeying this channel, but there was no clean second entries or any second entries at all. Then I finally found this first setup. I called it an almost trade. So it's, I mean, it's kind of not the cleanest. I mean, it wasn't the easiest trend channel to find because if you kind of, depending on where you cut it, you could already have an overshoot here because I was playing with this, thinking, okay, maybe there's an overshoot here, or depending on where you wanted to link up, I kind of settled on something that looked like this. And with this, before the setup even shows up, I was thinking the high side was something closer to this. It has pretty decent touch. So I thought it was something like this. So I'm thinking it's coming from the high side. It's a potential fail breakout here. And I saw this as a new high. It's a first entry long pullback. It creates a second entry long confirmed right here. I called it an almost trade because the trigger bar that came after the signal bar engulfs it, which is nice. But this isn't a very good signal bar. Plus, it already broke through the EMA. So it left me a little cautious. And the EMA itself is starting to flatten out. If it was more directional, like it was a strong push up, I would think, okay, there's momentum pushing up here. And it had a strong close. So it had some conflicting ideas. I wasn't really sure. I want to wait for a higher low. And then you get a higher low here. So the higher low actually breaks 1 point below and then flashes up. Now, this actually was pretty, I thought it was a possible trade because it's confirming the second entry long. EMA is starting to act as support. The signal bar, which is this guy, is really strong with a really strong close. So then I waited because even though it looks like a higher low here, if the next candle, which ends up being this guy, actually doesn't break below this guy and flushes down, then the higher low isn't very valuable and it won't really be a higher low, especially if the next candle breaks below this guy, because it could, end up here, then that might be the higher low. So I wanted to wait. I waited for this one to close and I have a confirmed higher low. It's a decent signal bar, or is a decent follow-up bar because it's only about 5 ticks. So I got my trade ready. This one opened, flushed down. I wanted to see it hold above the EMA. And before this candle closed, I think there was only like about 200 ticks left, maybe a little bit less. I entered 1 tick above the original signal bar, which is this guy. So you have first entry long, second entry long, higher low signal bar. If you're more aggressive, you would have entered pretty much on this red candle, but I wanted to verify that this candle here doesn't break below, because then the higher low might actually be ended up being this guy. So I waited. When this one confirmed, I entered 1 tick above. I didn't want to run with any runners today because it just feels very tight in the trading realm because it's 58.02 with a low of 57.025. So it's about 30 points, but even then it's not spanning the whole range. It's just really tight trading, especially what just happened at the open. So I entered here. I was able to get my entire position off with 1 tick to spare. But if I had it, if I entered a little late or one tick higher, it's debatable whether I would have gotten out here. So I'll say first entry short, second entry short. Combined with the second entry short, there's a failure. So that's how come when it broke above, I dropped in my order. It kind of had two key entry points. I like that it looks like it's continuing bullish to test the highs here. The trade worked out, then it chops around. It starts flushing down. Looks like it made two legs down. And then I found what I thought maybe this could be, this magenta down channel could be something. It also had this orange down channel in play as well. It's a break. I'm looking for a test of the low, ideally a rejection off of here. So it'd be rejection off the top of the magenta and coming down to test the low of the orange and test the low side of this magenta down channel. So it's a new high, new low here. It's a first entry short, pull back, second entry short. So it's a second entry short. I called it an almost trade because even though the EMA is flattening, there's a rejection off this top side. If it closed just more bearish, I mean, I'm asking a lot. This might have been a good enough trade for somebody else, but for me, I wasn't too sure. I wanted a close below the EMA. Even though the EMA is flattening, it just would have made me feel a little bit better. Then then it follows up. So it's a first entry short, second entry short, confirm second entry short. But now it's too late because if I put my order here, it would have filled me. Top sideways made me super nervous, and then I'd be wondering about the strength of this resistance. In this case, it would have worked out, but seeing this big flush up, I think it would have made me nervous. I would have considered getting out break even because this is really slow. It's starting to slow down, and the overall volume today was low in the first place, so I wasn't expecting a quick resolution of these candles. So I would have been a little extra cautious. In this case, it did work out, but I called it an almost trade. Prices move. I thought I saw kind of a triple test, but I'm thinking more dominant thing is this purple down channel. I don't see any clean second entries right here. It finally breaks up and through. So here I'm wondering what the heck's going on. It looks very sideways. This push up, two legs down, a third leg down, or just one big leg down, potentially a second push up. It's a first entry short here. Second entry short, good signal bar for second entry short, really far from the EMA, but I don't know that the strength of this is all that strong to trust it for a quick scalp. And if it looked like if I did take a short here, which is risky since it's above the EMA, I would have gotten filled and then probably gotten stopped out on this candle here. Then things are just moving sideways. I see this next setup, and I also called it an almost trade because it's new high, say first entry long, pullback, second entry long, potential higher low. We also have a localized new low, first entry short, pullback, second entry short has failed. So in real time, when I see this, I'm thinking, okay, clearly the EMA is starting to hold. It's a decent signal bar on the failure, but I'm also potentially at the top of a range. So it could be a failed breakout and flush back down. But I need to reconcile that the strength of the EMA is coming into play. However, EMA isn't quite as reliable right now because you have prices moving above, moving below, above, below, above, below. So it's just chopping all over the place. So you can't quite trust the EMA as acting as a support. Nevertheless, it's still there. So it does give me pause. So I called it an almost trade, and I just thinking, well, I might be at the high of a possible range, just let it go. It looks like if you did try to enter, let's say one tick above here, you would have gotten filled, and this candle here, this red one here, likely would have stopped me out because my stop would have been here. If you're more aggressive, you might have put your stop below this guy, clearly below the EMA, but then, you probably would have survived right here, and I'm just going to keep going. And then maybe you would have gotten stopped out depending on where your exit was. So glad I didn't enter that trade. But then I did see a second trade that's set up. Now this one I'm going to say is a little more aggressive. This setup isn't as clean in hindsight. I saw this as a fail breakout. It's a first entry long pullback, second entry long potential. It confirms the second entry long. This is actually a riskier trade, but I was thinking the EMA is holding. It broke above this signal bar, but the signal bar itself was very bad. It was too bearish. Although it closed above the EMA, I should have left this alone. But before this closed, I jumped on it. It entered here at the high of this previous. It closed above, and I thought, okay, this is probably going to push up for at least a quick scalp. But when this was, when this candle opened, and it was in the life of this candle, I was kind of regretting it because I thought, actually, this isn't a very safe trade because for me to get my 1 point scalp, I need the candle to push through this potentially established resistance right here, this blue one here. Fortunately, it does flush up, gives me my scalp. Actually, I took the whole thing off because remember, today is rather slow, so I didn't want to try for any runners because things just looked like they were just not good for running potential. But it looked like it would have worked if I did try to run or have a runner or at least 2 points. If you try to scalp any more, you probably would have gotten stopped out here. When I see this bounce, I'm thinking, okay, maybe there's this yellow up channel. There's no clean second entries. There is new high, first entry long, second entry long. I didn't really like this candle just because it's a small middle, small neutral candle, but you could also couple it with the new low here. First entry short, second entry short failure here. But by the time you have a confirmed failure and it closes so high, the trade's already gone without you. So you would have to just trusted this mediocre signal bar to try to go long on. And it's enough for a quick scalp, but it wasn't in real time looking that enticing. Then prices flush down on this red down channel. Keep in mind, I had trend lines in play, but this red one wasn't really established. So I didn't really trust. I just knew the overall bias is bullish, but nothing to trust a bounce off of this really, really loose, I guess, support and resistance. Then prices continue moving up. There's a new low, first entry short, second entry short. It's a good second entry short, but you're kind of not really in any kind of clear trading pattern right now because you're broke out of this yellow up channel. You broke right through. Potentially have an overshoot here. You might have a green up channel, which I was playing with, thinking, whoops, could this actually have been something like this? Break, test the new high, maybe it's coming down, but the break, this move is pretty big, almost the size of this. It almost looks like it's 2 legs up. So second entry short or not, I just wasn't really confident on my read, left it alone. And prices trying to kind of get choppy here. You do have a new high, first entry long, second entry long. It's a bad signal bar to go long on, potential failure, but the failure kind of occurs a little bit later. It's too far from the setup. So it's just, and the EMA doesn't add any extra help. So just kind of leave this alone type of setup. Pushes down. I do see this. So it's not really a trade, but I saw this as a potential new low, first entry short pullback, second entry short. The second entry short, I didn't mark it because it's a little ambiguous. Don't know why I can't move that arrow, but it's also inside bar. So the signal bar is inside bar, first entry short, second entry short, potential resistance off this orange down channel. But I would rather have this orange down channel be more confirmed with solid body touches, something like this, in which case it might have been an overshoot. And whether it touches here or is actually something higher and have an overshoot here, I couldn't quite tell yet. So I needed more price action to unfold. But if you were more aggressive, I suppose you could have taken this as a second entry short. I would have considered it if it was closing a little bit lower, or it didn't have this big, not big, but had this extra tail here. This extra tail tells me there's indecision. There was enough buyers to push it above the low to close it a little bit higher. So I'm kind of not liking that on a mediocre setup. Then prices continue moving. Breaks. Looks like it makes a measured move up. It's just really tight trading here. Then it looks like it pushes. This is when Fed Chair Powell comes out and speaks, and it's debatable whether he really caused this or not, but there is this big flush and sell-off. No real good clean entries that I could find that felt safe. This kind of pushes down. You have second entry here, like a new low, first entry short. Actually, I only have first entry short here. Kind of keeps moving down. You're not thinking of going long, so you're only looking for second entry shorts, but it's so far from the EMA. Then you're kind of riding the bottom of this orange down, yellow down channel, which could have also been here with an overshoot. But once it dwelled so far and so long outside, I dragged it down to about right here. But there's still no clean setups that I could find. Then it pushes up. You do have a new low, first entry short. Technically, you have a second entry short here. And then second entry short, maybe a failure that starts here, but it's just, in real time, this is what you're seeing. Is prices going to come back and test the low of this yellow, or is it actually going to move up? Hard to say. It decides to move up. So now you're thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to switch gears to go long, but I need a clean setup, ideally with the EMA, because the EMA is actually showing bias now. But then you don't really get any clean second entries. you do have a first entry long pullback. You technically have a second entry long here, but I also saw this as a first entry long here. Maybe there's a second entry long here, kind of visual. It gets a little confusing because you have to have a new low, first entry short, second entry short. You don't have the failure in the second entry short till about right here. And I did end up drawing this orange up channel, and I thought there might have been a possible trade here because you have a new low, first entry short, second entry short. Second entry short fails right here. However, the failure of the second entry short is below the EMA. So if the failure of the second entry short is above the EMA, it gives it more power. But since it's below, it could be a true second entry short with no failure. So when you see this in real time, I'm just extra cautious. So I thought if there was a higher low confirmation, then it could trust that this up channel is going to actually work. And you do get a higher low here, and it's bouncing off this potential support. I like that it moved one tick below and then closed relatively bullish. Now, the only thing that would have made me super confident is if it closed the high, at least to match this guy. But as you can see, it moved one tick below back, or at least it had to have ticked above this candle during the life of this candle. But it didn't do either of those. So although it's a more aggressive trade, potentially, you know, a more experienced trader might take it, I felt a little unsure, so I just decided to let it go. Turns out it would have worked out pretty well. Then I was looking here. There's actually a new high first entry long pullback, second entry long. This is technically a third entry long, but this is also a first entry long. If you group this move down and disregard this one tick, first entry long pullback, second entry long, this is maybe a trade here because this is only 7 ticks. And if a really strong signal bar close, bounce off the EMA, bounce off this orange up channel. So actually, I think this is actually a decent trade. So I'm going to mark it as second entry long visual because by the technical count, it really is a third entry. But you could also call it a higher low. So you got a couple of things going for it. So maybe there's a trade here. I actually didn't see that or think about it too well. Then it kind of pushes up. You don't really get any other second entries all the way into the close. And it's just really tight trading. I mean, back here is the last, right here, from here to here is 1 minute of trading. So that's just 2, and it's at the last minute of regular trading hours. So I didn't want to risk. I already had 2 trades today, was fortunate to get a win on both. I don't want to be messing around right here and potentially giving back any profit. So it's kind of how I saw the charts today. It was a little bit, well, it's kind of slow. And the whole, well, lately trading has been really slow. So hopefully things pick up. And I hope that was helpful.